those that were identified as non-essential. They'll be allowed to open at 25% occupancy. Churches will also be allowed to have services, and I'm going to go into some of those and give you some examples of what some of the churches are doing in the area, effective on Sunday morning. And then outdoor sports with no more than 4 participants. It was clearly outlined in this executive order. There's been many discussions over the last few weeks of whether or not golf and tennis, everybody followed that great debate, but it is clear that outdoor sports are okay with no more than 4 participants and with social distancing. It's phased. Phase 2 will go in effect on May the 18th, and that will allow barbershops, bowling alleys, gyms, massage parlors, salons, and video arcades to open at that time. A couple other things that I'd point out into this order, and then I'll turn it over to you, Katie, and we'll see what kind of questions we've got. But I know there was one question that I remembered during our conversation earlier, and that is masks are not mandated, and the governor addressed that no criminal enforcement provisions could be included on the local level. So, one of the things that we've always mentioned is there's no term for enforcement or no way to be able to enforce something that there's no sense in. There's significant challenges associated with placing it into an order. It is clear, and you've seen the recommendations from the CDC, and you've heard folks on the state level also mention to how important masks are, but they will not be mandated. Got some questions for me?
I do, thank you. So you mentioned that masks are not required under this order. However, we did receive a question. Are businesses still allowed to refuse service if someone is not wearing a mask?
Absolutely. Businesses will be allowed to do that. I know that I do know of a couple of businesses here in Rockwall County that had posted some signs that said that they, in their opinion, if you will, or their best interest, they felt that it made sense to require masks in their facilities for the best interest of their employees and for their customers. It's completely in the business owner's hands that they can definitely choose to make that a requirement.
Perfect. Thank you for further clarifying that. So you highlighted a few minutes ago that churches are allowed to pursue their in-person services. So what does this order mean for churches, and how are churches going to apply the new guidelines?
All right, let me give you an example right quick. I've got a real life example. I've had quite a few that have been sent to me, and I'll use the one that my church, First Baptist Rockwall, Steve Swafford, Pastor Swafford, sent me this morning. He says, "We will continue to make services, urging those who are at risk or worried to stay home. We will continue to make services available to them online. We're not going to have any child care will not be available. No Sunday school at the small groups. No shaking hands, cleaning before, between, and after services. Won't be passing the offering plate." How about that? Not handing out bulletins, having someone hold doors open or props so folks don't have to touch the handles. Social distancing in the crowds. Add an extra service if we need to, if it's needed. And spread out more, not running buses from the parking lot. Won't be, we'll remove hymnals and Bibles from pews so as to be able to clean easier and quicker. And we'll make hand sanitizer available while it lasts, and of course, encouraging folks that, to bring your own. And then of course, encouraging people not to gather after and between services. So that's just one of the examples. The other ones that I had sent to me that I'd had some questions with folks were very similar, included quite a bit of that, if not all of it.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about what this looks like for some of the businesses that have been most greatly impacted by this. From a practical standpoint, how are the guidelines applying to businesses going to be enforced, and who is going to be held accountable if a business is found not to be following the guidelines?
Well, Darby and I were kind of visiting about this before we went on the call, and we'll try. This will probably be one of those that there will be more to come on this, and we'll get with some of the cities and get some of the responses to that, and ask some of the code enforcement and law enforcement part of this. But this is clearly going to be all that participate, everybody's going to have a piece in this. There's no question about that. Know that it's going to be a significant challenge on a business owner. Katie, I think you and I are going to kind of touch on that here in just a second, but a significant challenge on a business owner, a retail store, a restaurant. See where it's going to be a big challenge on a restaurant to enforce 25% occupancy. It's going to take cooperation between the customer, between that business, and then no question, again, as I said, let's get back with more details on how each one of these cities are going to handle that with as far as code enforcement or law enforcement is concerned. But I do recognize that it's that's going to be a big challenge, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I can imagine that many of our local businesses will lean heavily on consumers and patrons of their businesses to help support these efforts. We've talked about what this looks like for restaurants in regards to minimizing to 25%. But what does it look like for what we perceive to be kind of a mass rush to these businesses as they're opening up? And how are we going to, or how would we encourage our community members to regulate themselves prior to entering the business and making sure that they're maintaining that 6-foot distance?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We knew what kind of a challenge. Anybody goes anywhere on Rockwall during normal times, if you will, quite a few of our restaurants throughout all of Rockwall County has always deal with a waiting period or lines outside their door. And it's a good thing in normal cases. In this situation, again, I can't emphasize how much discipline and how much patience it's going to take for all of us. I'm just as excited as anyone about the opportunity to be able to go out and eat at all of our restaurants. So it's just going to take a good discipline between us. I anticipate that we'll see some of our businesses doing online reservations prior to arrival and so forth like that to try to do the best they can to be able to minimize that. But it's definitely going to be a big challenge. And I fully recognize that we're just all going to have to be patient in terms of having our own personal disciplines as far as the waiting portion of that is concerned. And then, Katie, you and I touched on it a moment ago. The other thing is a reminder that I anticipate not all of our restaurants are going to open. Through some of the conversations that I had, myself and a few members of the task force that were my partners, we had mentioned our visit with restaurants, and we talked about what it's going to look like or what it potentially could look like, and what some of those businesses would do with a 25% or restaurants would do with 25% occupancy, 50, 75, so on and so forth like that. There are quite a few that said that at 25% it would just be too tough because of bringing back employees to cost of goods is a big part of that. And of course, then just the overall concept of managing 25% occupancy, and I fully recognize that, and I anticipate that there will be some restaurants, maybe even some retail stores throughout our community that will choose not to open. The Commissioner's Court, we just got out of a Commissioner's Court meeting a moment ago, and as I mentioned, libraries are optional in that, and we're not going to open the Rockwall County Library at this time. We're going to wait and assess it and discuss it in 2 weeks from now at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. We've received quite a few questions in regards to specific types of businesses, but before we unpack that a little bit, can we circle back to the mask? One of the questions we've received is, are restaurant employees required to wear masks?
No, they weren't outlined either as far as masks are concerned. I referenced that call that we had with several of our businesses. One of those included, I think, 16 different restaurants participated in a Zoom call with me last week. And I've spoken with about 4 or 5 other ones throughout the community. And what I felt reassured with coming off of those calls were the extra levels of discipline and extra levels of expectations that these restaurants had. And I think that they'll do a whole lot of different things. I think you'll see some of these restaurants with wearing masks, specifically folks that are working in kitchens, but it's still going to be a challenge for those that are working out there serving. But I think you'll see some other actions that will take. You know, we talked about some of the guys that mentioned menus, and, you know, removing the salt and pepper shakers off, going to the full package salt and pepper packets, and other packets for condiments and so on and so forth. And obviously, I think we'll see a new level of norm in terms of new levels of normal, if you will, as far as sanitation is concerned in each one of these restaurants. But no mask will be mandated with that either. To answer your question, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So now we'll dive into some of the more industry-specific questions that we've been receiving. So there's been questions about beauty parlors and nail salons and med spas. Can you share with us what you know about that specific industry?
Yeah, as I mentioned a moment ago, that would be part of phase 2. Anticipate that they will be included, or know that they will be included. That's the governor's plan right now to go into effect on May the 18th. I do know, and I've heard over and over again, reading through social media and through some of the other conversations or whatever, there's lots of conversations and lots of motivation going on. Folks trying to get the governor's ear to let him know their opinions on that. You know, but at this point, salons, as I mentioned earlier, salons, barbers, so on and so forth, are not going to be allowed to operate or open until May the 18th.
Thank you for that clarification. So we've received a question that is business specific, but I'm going to zoom out on it a little bit because I think it might lend itself to answer other business owners. You know, when we talk about class sizes and group classes, what are your recommendations, or what is the order specifically saying about those? We've got some folks who are able to limit class sizes and ensure that social distancing and proper cleaning measures are taken place. Can you readdress that for us, please?
Explain that to me again. Classes and where? What are we talking about?
So the question specifically is from the Young Chefs Academy, but I believe that that would apply to other sorts of classes, maybe workout classes that maybe aren't in a gym setting, or some of our area businesses who may have interactive activities.
Yeah, the best way to be able to answer that would be able to practice, quite simply practice the social distancing, the 6 foot between. None of that, again, is included or clearly outlined black and white or restricted. Let's put it that way. It's not restricted as far as the order is concerned, but definitely practicing the social distance. And there's other specific questions, as I said a moment ago. I know how this is, and I just over the last 24 hours have had so many questions myself that I've been able to ask and get answered. I'll take note of that one too and see if we can provide some other more detailed or a better detailed response to that. But the most important thing that I would mention right now would just be practice that social distancing.
The next question that we've received is why would we not allow businesses with one-to-one consumer relations to open with proper sanitation and safety precautions like masks, gloves, those sort of things? The highlight is that there are one-on-one interactions that may occur in a private setting. And so if you have any clarification on when that might be allowed, I think our listeners would benefit.
You know, real simply, as far as single person offices are concerned, those were outlined in governor's orders, G18. Services provided by an individual working and alone may operate, but I understand a little bit more specifically what you're getting to, and we'll get some more clarity and be able to provide some of those. Some of these we're just going to have to ask some more questions to be able to get some of those responses. But you know, I'll go back and tell you, when we were working with and this is okay, there would have been things that we would have been passed or put in place if an order or disciplines or regulations or restrictions were included in our order. But let's back up for a minute, and I'll mention this. I didn't struggle so much, or some of our conversations were leading towards being a little bit more lenient in some places with salons and so forth like that, but a little bit of hesitancy in a couple of those areas, such as theaters that I mentioned earlier. So there's all of this is a moving target. None of this is quite easy answers as far as being able to pull the trigger or get some of those, or including some stuff but not including others. I'll get a little bit more clarity on that one too, and we'll include that in an answer moving forward.
Great, thank you. So we do have a question. Will the county be allowing marriage licenses to be issued yet?
I want to encourage you to make sure you reach out. We're operating as business as usual, and I know that there's been some challenges on that with marriage license over in the county clerk's office. You can email the county clerk at smiller@rockwallcountytexas.com or call over at the county clerk's office to get a specific answer on when you should be able to do that. But I'll ask too when we get off the call. But marriage license, they'll be able to have the ability to be able to issue marriage license.
Judge Sweet, what are your thoughts on if we continue to see COVID positive cases increase in our county? Will the county reassess this order? And if we see an increase in cases between now and May 18th, what will our response be?
We'll have to see. I mean, that's obviously part of the discussion on the governor's level. This is a move on a statewide level. He chose to make that direction, or chose to take action, an executive order for counties that higher than 5 cases total would be able to open up at a 25% occupancy, and counties that had 5 or less were able to open up at 50%. But it's going to be kind of a moving target to see. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, and we'll see what the governor does. He has mentioned that I think you heard that in his press conference yesterday, that they would be watching it from there, and absolutely we're going to be paying attention to it here. Let me touch on some of those things right quick too. I want to talk about what we know here in the county as far as positive cases are concerned, and what some of our efforts are going to be over the next few days. We do have 70 positive cases. We're part of, or we're supported by the Region 2, Region 3 of the Department of Health and Human Services, one of many counties that are supported by that organization. And I touched on this the last time we talked about how they reported those positive cases back to the County Health Authority and to me, and that's when we reported those via Nixle, via social media, and on the county's website. It's been continuing to be a significant challenge. The one piece that we don't have in that, and that we're working hard to get, is a clear number of those that have recovered. We've been able to report, again, positive cases total for the county. The day that we've got those back, we've been able to report where they are as far as each city is concerned. We've talked about, we've got a little bit of a chart that's on the graph that's on the website and on that social media that talks about whether they've come from community spread or travel. But the one little piece of that puzzle that we've got to get back, or we've got to be able to complete and get reported back to the public, is the number of those that have recovered. And that's another piece of that puzzle. That's why I'm mentioning that's we've got to figure out how to get our hands on. Because case counts are something that's going to be part of this equation on a county level, and definitely it's been very, very clear that it's going to be, as it should be, on a state level, and definitely even on a national level. Most folks know that Broadmoor, one of our senior facilities here, had an outbreak this past week. We now have 20. We've tested, the employees and residents of that facility have all been tested. There's been 20 positive cases in the residents in Broadmoor. 11 of those are asymptomatic. They're not showing signs. 9 of those were positive showing signs. They still have 4 residents that are currently in the hospital. There are 4 residents that are in the facility that are isolated in a separate wing of the building behind a fire door. They also have plastic sheeting over that. They've got dedicated staff members that are working with that group. Anticipate that one of those individuals that's even in the hospital should go home soon. And then, unfortunately, that was the one death, the first death here, one death in Rockwall County that we reported this week. So all of that back to say that this is kind of a moving target is something that we're paying very much great attention to as far as positive cases are concerned here in the county. And any nicer way to put it, or any better way to put it than that, that will definitely be part of the equation statewide, and even on this, even on the county level that we'll look at over the next few weeks as we move forward.
Thank you, Judge. As we round out our presentation, I want to encourage you guys to get your questions in. We've got a couple more, but I want to make sure that we get to all of them that we possibly can. Judge, I did get a really good clarifying question. So does the governor's allowing outdoor athletic activities like golf and tennis also include things like outdoor boot camps or outdoor gym workouts, if they also limit those to 4 people and maintain spacing?
Maintaining spacing, there was a key part of it, maintaining spacing and the number of 4 participants, absolutely. 4 participants, maintaining social distancing, yes ma'am.
Do you foresee the aquatic center and the public pools opening this summer?
You know, that's a tough one to get. Yesterday, in that order, it specifically mentions that at this time, swimming pools cannot open. You know, through conversations over the last few days specifically with the city of Rockwall, I've had quite a few conversations with Mayor Pruitt and with City Manager Rick Crowley, and they talked about their biggest concern, the biggest challenge was, and it should be, is safety, and that would be training lifeguards and so forth, and having those guys certified and ready to roll. But right now, all we report on is exactly what we know, and it specifically says at this time that swimming pools cannot open. But rest assured that if things get better, and they get better quickly, that everyone around here knows how important the pools are, and that aquatic center is to the citizens of Rockwall. Reminder again, that aquatic center is part of the Rockwall ISD. So I don't want to step on their toes or speak for them, but at this time, again, pools will be closed, but we'll see what happens over the next few weeks.
So we've got a question here that I think our listeners would benefit from hearing your answer to. What has been done specifically to give residents easy access to COVID testing in Rockwall County?
It's a heck of a question. And it's been one of the things that we have worked very hard on and will continue to work on over the next few weeks. Access to testing, additional personal protective equipment for our first responders, and identifying sources for our some of those that are near our offices and those that are part of our most vulnerable population, including the elderly. And we've worked very hard on those 2 things, and we'll continue to do so. Let me touch on a couple of things as far as testing is concerned. There will be a drive-through testing facility that will be in operation on Wednesday, April the 29th, and Thursday, April the 30th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Each test will cost $50. You will not be permitted to get out of your vehicle, as the entire procedure from registration to payment to testing occurs within the confines of your vehicle to limit physical contact and reduce the risk of exposure for both citizens and provider. There will be a limit of 4 tests per vehicle. The address for the testing site is 215 Chris Cooney Parkway in Heath, Texas. Also, the Texas Division of Emergency Management and the National Guard has created a mobile testing operation that will be in Rockwall County on the 30th. I will tell you, let me add some, definitely as far as this first week is concerned, but I want to make you aware of this. This operation will not be fixed and will operate for 1 day, and then it will return to Rockwall County every 7 or 8 days on a rotation, and we'll share that information. Now, the first day that we're going to do this is we're going to use this for, I touched on the most vulnerable population. That's those that are over 65, and also extra emphasis on those that are in nursing facilities. This first day on the 30th, we're going to use that for testing for employees, staff in a couple of our senior facilities. But those are just a couple examples. and then we'll see how that goes. So we'll look at this on a weekly basis, and we will communicate this information on the county's website, the Rockwall County Emergency Management's Facebook page, and then Nixle. And I want to remind you again, that's the notification that you get via text or via email. I want to encourage you to text keyword RCOEM to the number 888-777. And that will allow you to get notifications. It's one where we send out the notifications on positive cases and other things. And we'll note on our website again and on the social media sites for emergency management. And we'll use Nixle to get out some information on additional testing. Let me touch on a few others that we've done. I'm sure that you saw that Walgreens is going to begin testing in some of the specific locations. I don't really have good news on this one just yet, but I'll tell you a quick story. The Butler store over in Dallas was the store that was selected to begin doing testing for Walgreens, but I had gone and visited with the store manager on into the district and onto the regional level contact with Walgreens, and emphasized the importance and a specific request for additional testing here in the two facilities. Haven't got the yes that yet, but I've gotten acknowledgement, and they have acknowledged receipt of that. That's two examples of some of the positives, to another example of one of the ones that just hadn't worked out for us yet, but the efforts are there, and our commitment here from the county level on behalf of myself, our county health authority, and on behalf of Rockwall County Emergency Management is that we will continue to push and pursue for increased and easily accessible testing. And as soon as we're able to report any of that, we'll communicate that. I know that we shared the other day, Royce City Urgent Care is one that we shared on my social media and on Rockwall County's Office of Emergency Management page that is providing some testing. And here we go. Let's take advantage of this. On this down here on the different comments or share of additional testing that you know. And let's get that word out if you're aware of something else. And if we find something new as a result of what you tell us, or anything that we find new in our pursuit, we'll make sure that we share that.
Great, thank you. So we have a question here. Do we have any indication that the state will recognize the difference between big box gyms and smaller fitness studios and their ability to control capacity and enhance safety and cleaning measures? For example, studios that use just one piece of equipment for the entire class that they must reserve in advance.
Very simply, that's part of our questions or our feedback. I know that we've had a couple of members of the task force that serve as city council members also that have pushed and given that feedback up through our representatives and also through some individual letters to the governor's office. We haven't got any kind of response into that, but we've definitely spoke up and looked for more clarity, and also expressed our opinion that some of those would be that we feel are. Quite a few of us feel that those should be able to do that, but we don't have any kind of, I don't have any answers for you at this time.
So you answered the question about marriage license, but after they get a license, they're hopefully going to find somewhere to get married at. So where does a wedding venue stand in regards to being open for appointments and events?
You stumped me. We'll get back with you. I'll have to do some visiting and ask some questions on that as far as some of the wedding venues are concerned. Obviously, if there was, let me address that just for a minute. If somebody was wanting to, that is able to perform, individual ceremonies, there's no problems with that. What I don't want to do is I don't want to answer for some of the specific venues and have restrictions on those guys when they call and they say, well, I don't want to be able to do that. But, there are individuals that have been performing ceremonies and throughout this whole topic of ordeal. But I don't want to misspeak and answer to that. But we'll reach out and get some clarity and answer that question directly. I don't want to misspeak on that.
Thank you for that. So we've gotten a couple of questions that I would generalize as I think that we might need a better understanding as to why larger businesses are allowed to open with a 25% capacity. However, some of the smaller businesses with one-on-one or limited interactions are still closed.
Great questions. Statewide order would be the best, quite honestly, the best way that I can be able to answer that. I had struggles early on with well, let me answer it this way. I've said all along 3 words that when we're through this whole ordeal, I don't want to ever utter again, and that's essential, non-essential, or social distancing. Really struggled with at the beginning. Essential businesses were wide open as far as retail is concerned, and then the smaller retail stores here were closed, and now they're only going to be able to get to 25% occupancy. And then you bring up a point as far as those individual offices are concerned, but we'll have to get some. I don't have a good answer for you in terms of the parameters that were used in that, other than what we were provided in the order.
Judge, we've seen quite a few measures taken that might have some longstanding benefits, such as additional sneeze guards in places, access to hand sanitizer in public places, an intentional effort to sanitize carts at grocery stores and some of our larger retailers, liquor to go, alcohol to go. With the shelter in place phasing us to get back open, do you foresee some of these staying in place?
Well, first of all, I'm going to answer your question on the good disciplines or good practices. The hygiene things, I anticipate that I said this beforehand, that as far as businesses are concerned, the things that were okay in the past, that we might have turned a blind eye towards, business owners know exactly what they're doing. They knew what they were doing in the past. They know that this game has changed. I anticipate that we'll see, tons and tons of standard. Because I told you a moment ago about the packets, the condiments, the availability of salt and pepper and ketchup. I think that that'll be something, and others that we'll see in some of these restaurants. I bet we'll see, hand sanitizer at the front of some of our different businesses. That you'll continue to see in some of these places with the bass carts, the Clorox wipes that you can go ahead and wash off each and every one of the carts up in front of the store, so on and so forth. I think we'll see tons and tons of that. Some of the stores that you go into that have the spacing, the register spaced off to where you can maintain the 6-foot social distancing. We'll see reminders throughout. I bet we see that for a long time in each and every one of our stores. As far as some of the things that were allowed in this, you mentioned that the liquor to go. I've specifically asked, I've made contact with our representative and asked for feedback on that. I'm not quite sure how that answer is going to go. He had concerns that might have been specific in that one order, but when we get a direct answer on that one, we'll get back and answer that one, because I guarantee you that's a question. I'd be interested. I can't see as far as the questions are concerned that have come up, but I'd be interested to know how many people have asked that one as far as the liquor to go is concerned. But I don't have a direct answer on that, but we'll get back to you for sure.
Judge, do you know if the courts are going to be open, and do you know what the requirements will be for attorneys and their clients?
More information will change on that. There is no update and no change in terms of what was still in place from the Office of Court Administration in terms of reopening for the courts at this time. Or no updates, excuse me.
We've received quite a few questions about differentiating between large businesses and allowing 25% in small businesses that have not received the opportunity to rephase back to open on May 1st. I do want to share that as we dive into this, the judge is going to get clarification in regards to gyms, dance studios, and all of the various industries that might be impacted by this. We do see those questions, and we will provide follow-up answers as judge receives that clarification. Judge, in closing, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us about the order, or do you have anything that you'd like to share with us about things that we can continue to do to remain safe during this time?
You know, yeah, I do, and thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Darby, for this opportunity to be able to visit with you. And I know these have been extremely trying times on everyone. I know it. It's unbelievable. I've told people over and over again, this is, I've been blessed to serve as an elected official here for quite a while as a council member, as a mayor, and spent some time over here as the county judge. And I've dealt with some unusual circumstances, some tough situations before, but there's never been anything anywhere near what we're having to deal with in this situation. And I'm fully aware that there isn't one person in this community, in this county, that has not been impacted either directly as a result of this virus with illness, a loved one, family member or friend with that, or obviously economically. You know, whether you're a business owner or an employee, just unbelievable. Schools being out, being in a situation where you're at home in a shelter-in-place, stay-at-home order with your kiddos. It's just been very trying, and I'm extremely sensitive to that. I know that as we walk through this, and I knew it was going to be this way, that there would be so many questions that when an order is placed, when an executive order like this is initiated or enacted on a state level, that there would be a ton of questions. And I hope that I was able to convey some of those. We've got some questions left that need to be answered, and that's just part of it. And we'll work with you here when we get off the call, ladies, to be able to get some of those answers towards that. But I can't tell you how proud I am of this community, of all of Rockwall County, for how dedicated that we have been to trying to be as safe as possible. You know, I've seen quite a bit of things on social media in terms of folks and their opinions of masks and so on and so forth. But overall, again, as I said, I'm fully aware of the fact that this has been extremely tough. There's going to be tough days that are ahead, but hang in there. I'm committed to making sure that we pass along as much information as we possibly can. We get answers to questions that people have. We've got to know, and I know that that's part of it. From a Rockwall County emergency management perspective, our commitment to you is that we will continue to pursue as much testing information as we possibly can, and we'll communicate that to you as soon as we get that. Same thing as far as results are concerned. You know, again, we'll work to protect our first responders here with personal protective equipment. And again, as we find more resources or more vendors that are able to provide that, we'll pass that along to our nursing facilities. We'll pass it along to dentist office doctors and so on and so forth out there, because it's so extremely important. And again, we'll make sure that we're communicating with you on anything else as we move forward.
Judge, thank you so much for carving out about 45 minutes of your time. I know that you guys are incredibly busy at the county and the local level, so thank you again for your time. Prior to ending, I just want to ask, ladies, are you guys ready to start moving again in the right direction with clarity and momentum? If so, join us on Friday, May 1st at 2:30 for a guest speaker, Betty Coffee, who will be sponsored by Divas and Darlings. This webinar is going to be available to Zoom, and if you have more questions or want more information about it, don't hesitate to reach out to a chamber staff member or look at the Rockwall Area Chamber of Commerce Facebook page for more information. This event is sponsored by the PWA in conjunction with Divas and Darlings. So we look forward to seeing you on Friday.